Great minds of humanity, celebrating human brilliance.
By the time most men of his century had chosen a single trade, Leonardo da Vinci was filling pages with flying machines, dissected muscles, fortress plans, river studies, and faces so alive that 500 years later, they still seem to breathe in the half-light of museums. Yet the greatest paradox of Leonardo is that the world remembers only a handful of masterpieces, while thousands of his thoughts remained unfinished, scattered across notebooks where genius appears not as certainty or comfort, but as restless, disciplined, unending motion. To understand why one man became the symbol of limitless human potential, we have to step into the fractured, competitive Italy of the Renaissance and follow an illegitimate boy from a Tuscan village toward workshops, courts, cathedrals, laboratories, battle plans, and finally, legend itself. Leonardo was born in 1452 into a world that rewarded lineage, guild membership, and classical schooling. Yet the very irregularity of his birth kept him outside the formal paths that shape most learned men, forcing him early to invent an identity before institutions could provide one. Because he belonged fully neither to the peasant life of his mother Caterina, nor to the legal profession of his father Ser Piero, he grew up in a social in-between space that often limits ambition, but in Leonardo's case widened perception and loosened inherited assumptions. Renaissance Italy itself was a chain of rival city-states where art served politics, engineering served war, religion shaped public spectacle, and brilliance could become currency overnight if a patron believed a gifted mind might glorify his chapel, secure his dynasty, or terrify his enemies. Within that volatile landscape, Leonardo would reinvent what an artist could be, not merely a decorator of chapels or palaces, but an investigator of nature who treated painting, mechanics, anatomy, music, architecture, and philosophy as parts of the same unfinished quest for underlying causes. He spent his early years near Vinci among olive groves, streams, birds, weathered stone paths, and shifting hills, and those rural surroundings trained his eye long before any master did, teaching him that movement, light, water, texture, and growth were nature's secret grammar. Unlike university men who were drilled in Latin authorities and scholastic debate, young Leonardo learned directly from the visible world, studying eddies in water, the tilt of leaves, the gait of animals, cloud shadows, and the changing atmosphere over the Tuscan countryside. Family records suggest he received basic reading, writing, and arithmetic, but his notebooks later reveal both the pride and frustration of a self-taught mind, always approaching knowledge sideways, through observation first and formal language second, then testing every claim against the eye. That outsider education became a hidden advantage, because Leonardo was not trapped by inherited categories and could ask childlike questions that trained scholars often ignored. How does a wing bear weight? How does a smile emerge? How does water carve stone? And how does vision deceive? Around his mid-teens, Leonardo entered the Florentine workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, where an apprentice learned everything with his hands, grinding pigments, preparing panels, drawing drapery, casting metal, carving surfaces, designing ornaments, and watching ideas travel from rough sketch to finished object. Florence was then a furnace of ambition under Medici influence, and inside Verrocchio's crowded studio, Leonardo encountered painters, sculptors, engineers, merchants, and humanists, absorbing the city's belief that beauty and intellect could sharpen one another and that art could be a form of power. Later tradition claimed that in Verrocchio's Baptism of Christ, the angel painted by Leonardo was so delicate and luminous that the older master felt surpassed. A story impossible to prove fully, but revealing how quickly his talent became impossible to ignore among those who saw the work. By his 20s, he was registered in the Painters Guild and already experimenting with softer transitions of light, more complex emotion, and startling fidelity to nature, even as commissions such as the Adoration of the Magi began to expose another lifelong pattern: brilliance tangled with delay. In the early 1480s, Leonardo left Florence for Milan, offering Ludovico Sforza not only his art, but in a famous self-advertising letter, his ability to design bridges, weapons, fortifications, canals, theaters, and grand civic spectacles for a ruler who valued usefulness as much as elegance. At the Sforza court, he reinvented himself as painter-engineer, staging festivals, studying hydraulics, planning an enormous bronze horse for the dynasty, advising on architecture, and proving that imagination in Renaissance politics was valuable only when it could entertain subjects, impress allies, and serve power. His Last Supper, painted in Santa Maria della Grazia, transformed a familiar sacred scene into a theater of shock and psychology, freezing the instant Christ announces betrayal as every apostle reacts with a different human storm, making theology suddenly feel immediate, physical, and painfully recognizable. But the same experimental mind that gave the mural its haunting subtlety also used an unstable technique that began deteriorating within Leonardo's own lifetime, a painful symbol of his entire career. Visionary achievement forever shadowed by fragility, incompletion, and the material resistance of the world. When French forces toppled Milan in 1499, Leonardo's world collapsed. With the Sforzas, the colossal horse remained unrealized, and the master who had seemed securely placed at court became once again a brilliant wanderer, carrying notebooks, instruments, and unfinished ideas through an uncertain political landscape. Those unsettled years sharpened rather than diminished him, because travel through Mantua, Venice, Florence, and beyond pushed Leonardo to observe cities as living machines, measuring streets, waterways, defenses, marketplaces, and bodies with the same analytical hunger he once brought to birds, storms, and faces. Serving Cesare Borgia for a time as military engineer and mapmaker, he produced surveys of extraordinary precision, showing that for Leonardo, drawing was never mere representation, but a tool for grasping structure, anticipating movement, managing risk, and discovering hidden order in dangerous environments. Back in Florence, he began the portrait now called the Mona Lisa, and instead of simply recording a wealthy sitter, he turned a human face into an atmosphere of thought, where expression shifts almost imperceptibly like weather over water, and identity feels both intimate and unknowable. As Leonardo entered his 50s, his notebooks became even more expansive, linking optics to painting, anatomy to movement, geology to deep time, botany to pattern, and mechanics to flight, as though every discipline were a doorway opening onto the same vast architecture of reality. His anatomical investigations, pursued through painstaking dissections with a seriousness rare among artists, sought not decorative accuracy, but functional truth, because he believed the body could be understood only by tracing how bone, muscle, vessel, organ, and motion work together in layered systems. He developed the smoky subtlety later called sfumato, dissolving hard outlines into veils of light so that forms seem to emerge the way vision actually works, uncertain at the edges, alive in transition, and richer precisely because certainty gives way to perception. Yet admiration followed by frustration remained the rhythm of his later career. As rulers desired his genius, rivals like Michelangelo sharpened public comparison, and major projects from battle murals to technical treatises stalled under perfectionism, politics, shifting patronage, or simply Leonardo's refusal to stop revising. In 1516, the aging Leonardo accepted the invitation of Francis I and crossed into France, carrying treasured notebooks and selected paintings, including the Mona Lisa, to the manor of Clos Lucé near the royal court, where his reputation arrived almost before he did. There, no longer racing to establish himself, he was treated less as a contractor and more as a living sage, discussing architecture, hydraulics, pageants, and philosophy. While his right hand weakened, his workshop continued around him, and his fame settled into a quieter kind of authority. When Leonardo died in 1519, he left no complete grand book to explain his thought, only paintings, designs, fragments, and notebooks so dense with curiosity that later centuries would keep rediscovering different Leonardos inside them. Artist, engineer, anatomist, natural philosopher, dreamer, and methodical observer. That is why his legacy exceeds any single masterpiece, because he became the enduring image of a mind unwilling to separate art from science, observation from wonder, or practical invention from the deepest questions about life, motion, perception, and humanity's place inside nature. Leonardo's true lesson is not that one person can master everything, but that extraordinary insight often begins when we refuse the walls between subjects and train ourselves to look longer, ask better questions, doubt easy categories, and follow evidence patiently across boundaries. His unfinished works matter almost as much as his completed ones, because they reveal genius not as effortless perfection, but as a demanding process of revision, doubt, experimentation, failure, return, and relentless adjustment until the visible world finally yields one more layer of truth. In an age of specialization, Leonardo still reminds us that curiosity is a discipline, attention is a form of love, and the future often belongs to those willing to remain students of the world long after success invites them to stop learning. If Leonardo's restless imagination moved you, like this documentary, share in the comments which of his ideas or artworks still feels most astonishing. And subscribe to Great Minds of Humanity for more cinematic journeys into the lives that changed our world.